The silent departure. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Ambassador Thexnor of the Vrelian Empire slammed 3 of his appendages against the crystalline podium, his bioluminescent scales flickering red with agitation. This is unprecedented. An entire species doesn't just vanish. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 247 civilizations murmured in agreement. Holographic displays floated above each delegation, showing the same disturbing data. Every human colony, station, and settlement across 73 star systems stood empty. Not destroyed. Not ransacked. Simply abandoned. Chancellor Mariah Stellhorn, a Kelzathi whose people had served as the Council's bureaucratic backbone for 3 millennia, raised her translucent hand for silence. Her voice carried the weight of genuine concern. 17 days ago, humanity ceased all communications. We attributed it to technical difficulties. Then their representatives stopped attending council sessions. Still we waited. Now we have confirmation. Every human habitat is vacant. Their ships are gone. Even their orbital platforms have been cleaned out. Cleaned out, barked General Cromath, the grizzled Theranian military commander whose species had fought alongside humans in the Krevix incursion. What does that mean? Mariah's image shifted, displaying footage from a human research station orbiting Proxima Tertius. The facility's corridors gleamed with sterile emptiness. No personal effects. No equipment. No bodies. Even the data cores had been wiped. They took everything, Mariah said quietly. Medical supplies, cultural artifacts, entertainment libraries, even the plants from their hydroponics base. It's as if they never existed. Trade Minister Volnex of the Sorothian Commerce Guild leaned forward, his monetary implants calculating frantically. This is economically catastrophic. Humanity controlled 18% of the Council's manufacturing output. Their absence will create supply chain disruptions across. Spare us your profit margins. Thexnor interrupted. We have a greater crisis. Where did they go? And more importantly, why? The chamber fell silent. Everyone present knew the answer to that second question, even if no one wanted to voice it. It was Cromath who finally spoke, his battle-scarred face grim. We know why. The council betrayed them. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several delegations began shouting at once, but Cromath's voice thundered over them all. 6 months ago, humanity petitioned for protection against Zinthari raiders attacking their colony ships. What did we do? We formed a committee. We scheduled hearings. We debated jurisdiction. And while we talked, 3,000 human civilians died. The matter was complex, Mariah began. It was simple. Cromath roared. They asked for help. We gave them paperwork. Ambassador Thexnor's scales shifted to a pale blue, his species equivalent of shame. It wasn't only that incident. There was the trade dispute where we sided with the Mordhani consortium despite clear evidence they were violating human patents. The colonial rights debate where we allowed the Vectar to claim a system humanity had discovered and settled first. Enough, Mariah interrupted, her voice hollow. We understand. The pattern is clear. For 2 centuries, humanity contributed to the Council. They shared their technology, their culture, their soldiers. They asked for little in return. And when they needed us most, we failed them. They should have raised their concerns through proper channels, insisted Councillor Pravith, a by-the-books Ordonian administrator. Cromath's laugh was bitter. They did. Repeatedly. I reviewed the archives this morning. In the past decade alone, humanity filed 417 formal complaints. Do you know how many were resolved in their favor? 32. Less than 8%. The weight of that number settled over the chamber like a funeral shroud. So they left, murmured Ambassador Yenera of the Lithic Communion, her crystalline form chiming softly with sadness. Without warning. Without farewell. Without giving us a chance to make amends. Would we have? Asked Thexnor quietly. If they had announced their departure, would we have changed? Or would we have formed another committee? No one answered. Mariah stood, her translucent form seeming frilier than usual. We must find them. We must bring them back. The Council needs humanity. The Council needs humanity's contributions, you mean? Cromath corrected coldly. Their industrial capacity. Their innovative thinking. Their willingness to fight our wars. He paused. Did we ever need them? Or just what they could give us? The question hung in the air, unanswered and damning. Issue a galaxy-wide search directive, Mariah ordered, her voice firm despite the tremor beneath it. All member species are to report any contact with human vessels or colonies. We will find them. We will explain. We will make this right. As the council members filed out, already composing their reports and directives, none of them noticed the small detail that would haunt them in the days to come. In the archive of the emergency session, timestamp locked and unalterable, was a single message that had arrived exactly 17 days ago, the day humanity went silent. It had been flagged as low priority by the automated systems and buried beneath thousands of other routine communications. The message was simple: to the Galactic Council, we came seeking partnership. We found politics. We offered friendship. We received indifference. We asked for justice. We received committees. You will not hear from us again. Not because we cannot forgive, but because you never thought we needed to be valued. Farewell. It was signed by Commandant Lyria Vashin, Chief Human Representative to the Galactic Council. The message had been waiting, unread, for 17 days. The search. 3 weeks after humanity's disappearance, the Galactic Council's search efforts had produced nothing but frustration. In a private meeting room far from the main chamber, Chancellor Mariah studied the holographic map with growing desperation. Red zones marked the locations of abandoned human settlements. Blue lines showed projected jump routes based on known human faster-than-light technology. The problem was simple: there were too many possibilities and not enough clues. They covered their tracks perfectly, reported Captain Zenith Kohler, the Council's chief intelligence officer. The Provaxian's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of professional admiration despite the circumstances. Every navigation buoy in human space was wiped. Every communication relay scrubbed. They even detonated their quantum beacons to prevent tracking. That level of coordination. Mariah trailed off. Suggests planning, Zenith finished. They didn't leave on impulse, Chancellor. This exodus was orchestrated months, possibly years in advance. Thexnor, who had joined the meeting along with General Cromath, cycled through several colors before settling on troubled gray. Years? They were preparing to abandon us for years while still serving on council committees, still sending their children to our universities, still hoping we'd change, Cromath interrupted. His gruff voice carried an edge of pain. My aide did some digging. Apparently, the human representative submitted a classified proposal 8 months ago. Something called the Partnership Restoration Initiative. Did either of you see it? Mariah and Thexnor exchanged glances. Both shook their heads. Neither did anyone else, Cromath continued. It got buried in the Subcommittee for Interspecies Relations Improvement, which hadn't convened a meeting in 4 years. Zenith pulled up a document on the holodisplay. I found it in the archives. The humans proposed a complete restructuring of how the Council addresses member grievances. Faster response times, mandatory arbitration for trade disputes, protection guarantees for developing colonies. She paused. They weren't asking for special treatment. They were asking for the Council to function as it was originally designed to. And we ignored them, Mariah said softly. We didn't even acknowledge receipt of the proposal, Thexnor added, his scales flushing with shame. A heavy silence filled the room until Cromath broke it with a question. Have we considered that maybe we shouldn't find them? 3 pairs of eyes fixed on him. Hear me out, the general said, raising his hands. The humans left because we failed them. Repeatedly. What right do we have to drag them back into a system that doesn't serve them? Especially when we're only looking because we need what they provided. The Council cannot function without, Mariah began. Then maybe the Council doesn't deserve to function, Cromath interrupted. At least not in its current form. Before anyone could respond, the room's communication panel chimed urgently. Zenith activated it, and a junior officer's face appeared, the young Kelzathi looking panicked. Captain. We've received reports from the Outer Rim. The Zinthri supremacy has launched attacks on 4 former human colonies. They're claiming the territory as abandoned assets. Cromath was on his feet instantly. How long until we can get defense forces there? 18 hours for the nearest fleet. The Zinthri can strip those planets in 6, Zenith reported grimly. Thexnor's colors shifted to furious crimson. They're vultures. The moment humanity leaves, they move in to pick the bones. But Mariah's expression had gone cold with realization. It's not just the Zinthri. If word spreads that human space is undefended, every opportunistic species in the galaxy will rush to claim what they can. She looked at Cromath. Your military. What's the strategic assessment? The general's face was grave. 73 star systems, most strategically positioned at key junction points in Council space. The humans chose their locations well. They created a defensive buffer between our core worlds and the wild sectors. He paused. Without them, those sectors are exposed. We're exposed. How long until hostile forces realize this? They already have, Zenith said, pulling up new data. I'm receiving reports of unauthorized jump signatures in at least a dozen former human systems. Raiders, pirates, splinter groups, and the Vectar hierarchy. The room went cold at that name. The Vectar were an expansionist empire that had clashed with the Council before, only to be repelled by combined human-Theronian forces in the Battle of Kellner Ridge. The Vectar fear our military, Thexnor said slowly. Or rather, they feared our military when humans were part of it. Humanity contributed 40% of our rapid response forces, Cromuth confirmed. Their ships were faster, their tactics more adaptive, their crews more dedicated. He emphasized the last word pointedly. We relied on them to plug gaps in our defense, and now those gaps are canyons. Mariah activated the main council communication system. I'm calling an emergency military session. All fleet commanders, all defense coordinators. We need. Chancellor. Another communication interrupted, this one marked with the highest priority level. The face that appeared belonged to Admiral Torvin Scalix, commander of the Council's Third Fleet. Behind him, warning klaxons blared. The Vectar have crossed the Helion border in force. 20 capital ships, hundreds of support craft. They're heading straight for Tarvos Prime. Tarvos Prime, a major council world home to 8 billion souls. And it had been defended by the human Stellar Navy's 7th Fleet. A fleet that no longer existed. Mobilize everything we have, Mariah ordered, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. I don't care if you have to pull garrison forces from every safe system. Stop them. Chancellor, Torvin said grimly. Even if we strip our defenses elsewhere, we can't reach Tarvos Prime before the Vectar. And without the human fast attack squadrons. He didn't need to finish. Thexnor's scales had gone pale white, his species' color of horror. How long do the people of Tarvos Prime have? To evacuate? 3 days, maybe 4 if they're lucky. 8 billion people. 3 days. Cromuth slammed his fist against the wall, creating a sizable dent. Where's the 7th Fleet? Where's their backup? There is no backup, General, Zenith said quietly. The 7th Fleet was entirely human crewed. When they left, they took every ship, every weapon, She stopped. Wait. Everyone turned to her. Pull up the last known positions of all human military assets, she ordered her console. The holo display shifted, showing the last recorded locations of human naval forces throughout Council space. Zenith's 6 eyes widened. They weren't positioned for defense of human colonies. They were positioned to defend our most vulnerable systems. Mariah studied the map, and the truth of it made her chest ache. Even at the end, even while planning their departure, the humans had maintained their defensive positions, protecting Council worlds instead of their own. They could have left us exposed months ago, Thexnor whispered. They could have made us vulnerable as revenge for our failures. But they didn't. They stayed until they could ensure we'd have at least a minimal defense, Cromuth said, his voice thick with something between respect and regret. They gave us time to adapt. We just didn't know we needed to. The communication panel chimed again. More reports flooded in, Mordhani pirates raiding trade convoys that had been protected by human escort ships. Krevix insurgents attacking mining operations that human security forces had been guarding. Systems that had been stable for decades suddenly erupting into chaos. The map of Council space transformed before their eyes from orderly blue territories to a spreading infection of red warning zones. How did we not see this? Mariah asked, though she knew the answer. How dependent had we become? They were the glue holding the Council together, Zenith said simply. Not because they were the strongest, though they were formidable. But because they showed up. When there was a problem, humans responded. When there was a crisis, humans helped. They didn't wait for committee approval or budget allocation. They just did what needed to be done. And we took it for granted, Thexnor finished. An alert blared across all their consoles simultaneously. The message was brief. Vectar fleet has engaged Tarvos Prime's orbital defenses. Planetary shields at 60% and falling. Mariah closed her eyes. When she opened them, her expression had hardened with decision. Send a priority broadcast on all frequencies. Maximum power. Include the ones humanity used. Chancellor? Zenith questioned. If there's even a chance they're listening, if they have even a shred of the compassion they showed us for 2 centuries? Mariah straightened her shoulders. We're going to ask for help. We're going to tell them the truth. And we're going to beg. Beg. Thexnor's scales flickered with shock. Yes, Mariah said firmly. Because that's what you do when you've wronged someone and desperately need their aid. You humble yourself. You admit your failures. And you ask for forgiveness you don't deserve. She activated the transmission system, and her image would soon broadcast across known space, reaching every corner where human receivers might still be listening. This is Chancellor Mariah Stellhorn of the Galactic Council. I am speaking directly to humanity wherever you may be. You left us without farewell and you had every right. We failed you. We ignored your concerns, dismissed your needs, and took your contributions for granted. We have no right to ask anything of you. But 8 billion innocent lives on Tarvos Prime are about to be extinguished because we lost the protection you provided. I'm not asking you to rejoin the Council. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm simply asking, if you can find it in your hearts, please help them. Help us. One last time. She ended the transmission and waited. They all waited. But only silence answered. The Council crumbles. 7 days after the Vectar attacked Tarvos Prime, the Galactic Council faced the full weight of its new reality. Chancellor Mariah stood before the emergency assembly, her translucent form dimmed with exhaustion. Behind her, the holographic display showed the brutal mathematics of catastrophe. Tarvos Prime had fallen after a 3-day siege. 4 billion had evacuated in time. 4 billion had not. The death toll was still being calculated. The Vectar have claimed 12 former human systems, Mariah reported, her voice mechanical from delivering endless bad news. The Zinthri supremacy holds 8. Various raider groups control another 17. Of the 73 systems humanity once occupied, the Council has managed to secure only 15, and those are under constant assault. Trade Minister Volnex appeared via hologram, his form flickering from some secure location far from the chaos. The economic damage is unprecedented. 34% of all Council trade routes pass through human-protected space. Those routes are now too dangerous to navigate. We're facing supply shortages of critical materials across 18 sectors. People are starving, added Representative Jalara of the Orthan Collective. Medical supplies aren't reaching frontier colonies. The infrastructure humanity maintained, communication relays, navigational beacons, emergency response stations, it's all gone. We didn't realize how much they did until they stopped doing it. General Chromatha's image appeared, broadcasting from the bridge of his flagship. Behind him, crew members rushed between stations, responding to multiple emergencies simultaneously. Military situation is deteriorating. The Vectar aren't stopping at Tarvos Prime. They're pushing deeper into Council space, and without human fast attack squadrons to counter them, we can't respond quickly enough. We're playing defense across 1,000 fronts. Where's the Second Fleet? Demanded Ambassador Thexnor. Pinned down in the Kelrathi system, fighting off Krevik's raiders who got brave once they realized no human reinforcements were coming. Chromatha's face was haggard. The Third Fleet is protecting the core worlds. The Fourth is scattered across a dozen minor incursions. We simply don't have enough ships, and the ones we have aren't positioned correctly. The humans were our rapid response force. Without them we're always too late. Councillor Pravith spoke up, his voice carrying the rigid certainty of bureaucratic thinking. We need to recruit replacement forces from member species. Implement emergency conscription protocols. You want to conscript civilians? Chromatha's voice dripped with contempt. To replace professional soldiers who trained their entire lives and actually wanted to serve? That'll work brilliantly. We could offer financial incentives. The humans didn't serve for credits. Chromath roared. They served because they believed in something. Because they thought the Council stood for justice, protection, cooperation. They were idealists. He paused, his expression bitter. We cured them of that, didn't we? The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. It was Ambassador Yenera whose crystalline voice chimed with the question everyone was thinking. Has there been any response to the Chancellor's broadcast? Mariah's shoulders sagged. No. 7 days of broadcasting on every frequency. Nothing. Either they can't hear us or they're choosing not to respond. Can you blame them? Muttered someone in the back rows. What about the tracking efforts? Thexnor asked. Captain Zenith's investigation? Dead ends, Mariah admitted. We've traced some of their jump signatures, but the trails go cold after 3 or 4 hops. They're using some kind of navigation technology we don't recognize, possibly something they developed in secret, knowing they'd need to disappear. They were smarter than we gave them credit for, Volnex observed. In every way. An alarm blared through the chamber. Mariah pulled up the alert. Morthani Consortium forces have blockaded the Praxis system. They're demanding immediate payment of outstanding trade debts or they'll seize council assets. Praxis is a core system. Thexnor's scales flashed alarm red. They wouldn't dare. They dare because we're weak, Cromath interrupted. Everyone can see it now. The council without humanity is a ship without engines. We're just drifting, waiting to crash. More alerts followed in rapid succession. Riots on Kelrath over food shortages. The Sorothian Commerce Guild threatening to withdraw from the council unless their trade routes were secured. 3 minor species petitioning to leave the council and seek independent protection agreements. A pirate armada assembling in the Badlands, preparing to raid council territory with impunity. The ordered civilization that had stood for millennia was fracturing in real time. How did this happen? Jalara asked, her voice small. How did we become so dependent on one species? We weren't dependent on them, Zenith said, her image appearing on the communication channel. We were dependent on what they represented. Humans were the council's conscience. When something needed doing, they did it. When someone needed help, they provided it. Not because regulations required it, but because it was right. They made the rest of us believe the council stood for something more than politics and trade agreements. They made us better, Yanera chimed softly. Or at least they made us try to be. Mariah felt the weight of every decision she'd made, and failed to make, pressing down on her. The question is no longer whether we can find humanity. The question is whether we can survive without them. We're a council of 247 species, Pravith protested. Surely we can adapt. Adapt to what? Cromath cut him off. We're not facing a minor crisis. Our military is overwhelmed. Our economy is collapsing. Our territory is being carved up by every hostile force that was held in check by human deterrence. And worst of all, our members are losing faith. He gestured at the display showing petition after petition from species wanting to leave. The council is dying. Humanity was the heart that kept it beating, and we ripped that heart out through our own negligence. Then we find a way to make amends, Thexnor insisted. We reform the council. We implement everything the humans asked for in their proposals. We prove we've changed. Changed for whom? Yanera asked gently. For humanity or because we need them? The question silenced even Thexnor. Both, Mariah said finally. It's both, and we need to be honest about that. Yes, we need humanity's help. But we also owe them justice. We owe them the changes they requested. We owe them a council worthy of their faith. She straightened, decision crystallizing in her expression. I'm calling for a vote. Complete restructuring of council operations. Immediate implementation of every reform humanity proposed. And a formal apology, entered into permanent record, acknowledging our failures. That's essentially admitting the council was broken, Pravith objected. The council is broken, Cromath said flatly. Humanity's absence just made it obvious. All in favor? Mariah called. The vote was nearly unanimous. Only Pravith and a handful of other bureaucracy-minded councillors abstained. Motion passes, Mariah declared. We reform immediately. Draft committees will work around the clock to implement changes. And we continue broadcasting to humanity, telling them what we're doing and why. Even if they never respond, at least we'll have tried to become what they deserved from the beginning. Another alert interrupted, this one different from the others. Captain Zenith's image appeared, her 6 eyes wide with something between shock and hope. Chancellor, we've detected a signal. It's using old human frequency protocols, but the encryption is nothing we've seen before. The chamber went silent. Can you decrypt it? Mariah asked, not daring to hope. Already working on, wait. Zenith's expression shifted to confusion. It's not encrypted. It's just formatted strangely. I think it's a translation issue. They're using a language variant we don't have on file. Play it, Cromath ordered. The signal crackled to life. The voice that emerged was human, no question about that. But the accent was strange, the cadence unfamiliar, as if the language had evolved in isolation. Attention Galactic Council. This is Commandant Lyria Vashan, broadcasting from the Exodus Fleet. We received your distress call. After consultation with our leadership, we have decided to respond. However, we will not be returning to Council space. Instead, we offer the following: coordinates for emergency supplies we've left in secure caches throughout the former human systems. Defense grid access codes so you can reactivate the security networks we built but never told you about. And tactical data on Vector fleet movements that we've been monitoring. There was a pause. We do this not because you deserve our help. We do this because the innocent people suffering from the Council's collapse don't deserve to be punished for your failures. Consider this our final gift. We hope you build something better. But we won't be there to see it. Vashan out. The transmission ended. The council chamber erupted in overlapping voices, some calling for an immediate response, others demanding they trace the signal, still others debating the meaning of every word. But Mariah noticed something the others had missed. She replayed the transmission, listening carefully to the background noise. Beneath Vashan's words, she could hear something: the distant sound of children laughing, the murmur of a large crowd, the hum of massive engines. They're not hiding in some remote system, Mariah whispered to herself. They built something. Something big enough to carry all of them. They didn't just leave the council. They left this entire region of space. Thexnor had noticed too. How far could they have gone in just a few weeks? Zenith was already working the calculations. When she looked up, her expression was grave. Based on the signal delay and the power required for transmission, they're at least 15,000 light-years from council space. Maybe more. 15,000. Volnex's voice trailed off in shock. That's impossible. No species has faster-than-light drives capable of. Apparently humans do, Chromith interrupted. Or they developed them. While we were ignoring their proposals and dismissing their concerns, they were building an ark and planning an exodus that would take them far beyond our reach. Mariah accessed the coordinates Vashan had provided. Each one corresponded to a cache of supplies: medical equipment, food synthesizers, power generators. Everything the struggling council worlds would need to survive the crisis. They prepared care packages, she said in wonder. Even while planning to leave forever, they left supplies for us. Just in case. That's very human of them, Yenera chimed, her crystalline voice warm with sad admiration. Send a response, Mariah ordered. Thank them for the supplies. Tell them about the reforms. And tell them. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Tell them we hope they find what they were looking for. And that if they ever choose to make contact again, we'll work every day to be worthy of it. Chancellor, Pravith spoke up. Should we not insist they provide more details on their location? For diplomatic purposes. The look Mariah gave him could have frozen stars. They don't owe us anything, Counselor. Least of all their location. They've made their choice and we will respect it. That's the first step in becoming a council they might have been proud to belong to. As the message was prepared and sent, everyone in the chamber understood the truth. Humanity wasn't coming back. This was goodbye, delivered with enough grace to provide aid even in departure. The Galactic Council would survive. It would reform. It would adapt. But it would never again take for granted the species that had once held it together. In the depths of space, 15,000 light-years away and traveling farther with each passing day, the Exodus fleet received the Council's message. Commandant Lyria Vashan read it aloud to the assembled leadership. When she finished, there was silence. They're actually implementing the reforms, said Admiral Marcus Torvin, his weathered face skeptical. All of them. Because they have no choice, replied Director Naya Chorus, the fleet's senior diplomat. They're desperate. Does it matter why they're doing it? Asked young Captain Jasper Kane. If the reforms make the Council better, isn't that what we wanted? Vashan gazed out at the vast fleet stretching in all directions. 300 Ark ships, each carrying tens of thousands of souls toward an uncertain future in unexplored space. Behind them, the children of humanity would grow up never knowing the Galactic Council. They would build new worlds, forge new alliances with whatever species they found in the uncharted territories ahead. They would start fresh, without the weight of disappointed idealism dragging them down. It matters, Vashan said quietly, because true change comes from belief, not necessity. But maybe... She turned back to her officers. Maybe desperation is where belief begins. Maybe the Council needed to fall apart to rebuild itself correctly. Should we send another message? Chorus asked. Vashan shook her head. No. We said what needed to be said. The rest is up to them. She typed a final command into her console, permanently disabling the long-range transmitter that could reach back to Council space. The Exodus fleet would maintain its forward sensors, would chart new territories, would search for new alliances. But the chapter with the Galactic Council was closed. Humanity was going home, they just had to find it first. The hidden legacy. 3 months after humanity's exodus, The Galactic Council's reformation was well underway, and revealing truths no one had expected. Ambassador Thex Nor stood in the ruins of the human administrative complex on Kepler Station, the last major human facility that hadn't been completely stripped before their departure. The Council had finally gotten around to inventorying what was left behind, and what they were finding was disturbing. "This doesn't make sense," said Archivist Velman, a meticulous Kelzathi who had been documenting the abandoned facilities. She gestured at the massive data core they just powered up. According to these records, humanity maintained 17,000 separate monitoring stations throughout Council space. Not military installations, monitoring stations. Monitoring what? Thexnor asked, his scales shifting to curious orange. Everything. Velman pulled up a holographic display. Asteroid collision trajectories. Solar flare activity. Cosmic radiation levels. Quantum instabilities near jump points. They were watching for natural disasters and hazards across the entire Council territory. Thexnor felt something cold settle in his chest. Were we aware of this network? Not formally. It seems to have been maintained as a courtesy. Velman's translucent fingers danced across the interface. And look at this. They were providing early warning data to Council systems, automatically without requiring requests or compensation. When that solar flare nearly destroyed the Morthani colony world 4 years ago, the humans detected it 6 hours before our sensors did and sent the alert that enabled evacuations. The Morthani claimed credit for that early detection, Thexnor said slowly. I remember the press releases. The Morthani took credit for a lot of things, Velman said with unusual bitterness. According to this archive, humanity quietly prevented 14 major disasters in the last decade alone. Asteroid strikes, solar events, quantum cascade failures, things that would have killed millions. She pulled up another file. And they maintained something called the Sanctuary Protocol. Look at these coordinates. Thexnor examined the data and felt his scales pale. These are hidden stations in deep space. There are hundreds of them. 372 to be exact. Each one stocked with emergency supplies, functioning life support, and faster-than-light communication beacons. They're positioned along every major exploration route and trade lane in Council space. For what purpose? For rescue. Velman opened another file, this one containing thousands of entries. Ships in distress. Colonies facing catastrophic failures. Explorers stranded in uncharted systems. The humans maintained a quiet rescue network. When someone sent out a distress call, if Council forces couldn't respond quickly enough, a human team did, usually before anyone even knew they were there. Thexnor stared at the endless list of successful rescues. Hundreds of thousands of lives saved from dozens of different species. Why didn't they tell us? Why hide this? They tried to integrate it with Council operations, Velman said, pulling up formal proposals. 7 times over the past century, they proposed creating an official Council-wide rescue service. Every proposal was rejected or stalled in committee due to budget concerns. So they just did it themselves. Quietly. Before Thexnor could respond, his communicator chimed. It was Captain Zenith Kohler, the intelligence officer. Ambassador, you need to see what we found in the former human military archives on Titan Base. More hidden programs? More like an entirely hidden war. An hour later, Thexnor stood in Titan Base's command center alongside General Cromuth, Chancellor Mariah, and Zenith. The holographic display showed military engagement records that shouldn't have existed. The Krevix incursion, Zenith began highlighting a period from 7 years ago. Official records state it was a minor conflict, 370 casualties resolved in 4 months. That's what the reports said, Cromuth confirmed. The reports were incomplete. Zenith shifted the display. According to human military logs, the Krevix incursion was an attempted full-scale invasion. They had assembled a fleet of over 1,000 ships and were planning to strike at the heart of Council space through a dimensional rift we didn't even know existed. The display showed battle after battle, each one taking place far from Council territories, in the dark spaces between systems where sensors couldn't reach. The human military engaged them in secret, Zenith continued. For 4 months they fought a grinding war of attrition, never letting a single Krevix ship reach populated space. The 370 casualties? Those were from the handful of skirmishes that took place close enough to Council observation. How many actually died? Mariah asked, her voice barely a whisper. 43,000. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. The humans lost 43,000 soldiers protecting Council space from an invasion we never knew was happening. They fought. They died. They won. And they never told us because they knew we'd form a committee to study the threat instead of acting on it. Chromatha's face had gone ashen. I fought in the incursion. I was decorated for my service. You're telling me the battle I remember was a minor skirmish compared to the real war? The humans made sure the battles we saw were the ones we could handle, Zenith said. They took the impossible fights themselves. And according to these logs, the Krevix incursion wasn't the only secret war. There were at least 6 others over the past 2 decades. 6 times humanity stood between the Council and annihilation, and we never knew. Thexnor's scales cycled through a dozen colors as his emotions overwhelmed his natural control. Why? Why do this? Why not tell us? Why not demand recognition, gratitude, compensation? Because they were idealists, Mariah said softly, understanding dawning in her eyes. They believed in what the Council was supposed to represent. They didn't protect us for glory or payment. They protected us because it was right. And we repaid them with committees and indifference, Chromath added bitterly. Zenith pulled up another file. There's more. The humans maintained detailed psychological profiles on every Council member species. Not for intelligence purposes, for cooperation purposes. They studied how we think, how we communicate, what we value. Then they adapted their behavior to work better with each species. Examples flashed across the display. Human diplomats using different negotiation styles with different species, human traders adjusting their tactics to match cultural preferences, human soldiers modifying their command structures to integrate better with allied forces. They did all the work of understanding us, Thexnor realized, while we never bothered to understand them. Oh, we understood them, Chromath said darkly. We understood they'd show up when needed. We understood they'd solve problems without being asked. We understood they could be taken for granted. He slammed his fist on the console. We understood them perfectly. We just didn't respect them. Mariah activated the communication network. I'm calling another full council session. Every member needs to see this. They need to understand what we lost, and why we lost it. Will it change anything? Zenith asked. Humanity isn't coming back. No, Mariah agreed. But maybe it'll change us. Maybe understanding the depth of our failure is the first step toward ensuring we never repeat it. 2 weeks later, the Reformed Council held its first session under the new protocols. The changes were immediately visible. Simplified procedures, mandatory response times for grievances, transparent voting records, and a new council guard, a combined defense force drawn from multiple species, modeled after what humanity had been doing unofficially for decades. Ambassador Thexnor stood before the assembly, presenting the findings from the human facilities. The chamber watched in stunned silence as the truth unfolded. The hidden rescues, the secret wars, the quiet monitoring systems that had kept them all safe. When he finished, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. It was Representative Jalara who finally spoke. We owe them more than we can ever repay. We owe them better than we gave them, Councillor Pravith corrected, his voice thick with shame. Even the most rigid bureaucrat had been moved by the revelations. The question, said Trade Minister Volnex, is what do we do now? The reforms are a start, but they're hollow without humanity here to benefit from them. Then we make sure the next species that needs us gets what humanity deserved, Chromath said firmly. Every species that joins the Council from this day forward will be treated with the dignity and support we should have given humanity. That's how we honor their legacy. And the systems they once protected? Asked Admiral Torvin via hologram. We've managed to secure 23 of the 73 former human systems, but the rest are still under hostile control or disputed. We fight for them, Chromath said simply. Not because we want the territory. Because those systems were important to humanity, and defending them is the least we can do. Chancellor Mariah nodded. Approved. The Council Guard will prioritize reclaiming former human space. Not for ourselves, we'll hold it in trust as a memorial to what they built and what they meant to us. She pulled up the star map showing the Exodus fleet's last known trajectory, a line pointing into uncharted space, toward regions no Council species had ever explored. They're out there somewhere, Mariah said quietly, building something new. And maybe, centuries from now, our descendants will encounter their descendants. When that day comes, I hope we've become worthy of the second chance they gave us by leaving those supply caches and defense codes. They left us more than supplies, Thexnor said. They left us a blueprint for what we should be. Every hidden station, every secret rescue, every quiet sacrifice, It's all a map showing us how to actually live up to our ideals instead of just talking about them. The council voted unanimously to establish the Vashan Protocols, named after Commandant Lyria Vashan, whose farewell message had started the avalanche of reforms. The protocols enshrined everything humanity had asked for: rapid response to member needs, protection for vulnerable colonies, fair arbitration of disputes, and transparent governance. But they also added something new: the Remembrance Clause. Every council session would begin with a reminder of humanity's contributions and the cost of taking any species for granted. It was a wound they would never let heal because the scar would serve as a permanent reminder. "We were given a gift," Mariah said as the session concluded. 200 years of humanity's idealism, service, and sacrifice. We didn't cherish it. We didn't even notice it. We only understood what we had when it was gone. She paused. "We can't undo our failures. But we can learn from them. We can be better. We must be better." As the council members departed, Thex Nor remained behind, staring at the holographic display showing humanity's exodus route. 15,000 light-years and counting, a distance that might as well be infinite. "Do you think they're happy?" he asked Zenith, who had also stayed. The intelligence officer's 6 eyes blinked thoughtfully. "I think they're free. Free from disappointment. Free from being taken for granted. Free to build something that matches their ideals instead of trying to fix something that never wanted to be fixed." "We could have given them that here." "Yes," Zenith agreed. "But we didn't. And that's something we'll have to live with." Thexnor's scales settled into a deep blue, the color of mourning in his species. "I hope they do find what they're looking for. And I hope they never look back." "They won't," Zenith said with certainty. "That's the thing about humanity we never quite understood. Once they make a decision, they commit completely. They loved us completely when they were here. And they'll leave us completely now that they're gone." "Complete?" Thexnor echoed. "That's the word for them, isn't it? They didn't do anything halfway. Not their service, not their sacrifice, and not their departure." In the silence of the empty chamber, with the stars wheeling overhead through the dome, 2 members of the Galactic Council mourned the loss of the species that had held them together, and hoped that their absence would teach a lesson their presence never could. Somewhere in uncharted space, the Exodus fleet pressed onward into the unknown, carrying humanity toward whatever future they would forge for themselves. Behind them, they left a council struggling to become what it should have been all along. It was a painful legacy. But perhaps pain was the only teacher the council would listen to. The reckoning. 6 months after humanity's exodus, the galaxy had learned a harsh truth. The Galactic Council had been living on borrowed stability, and humanity had been the one lending it. General Cromath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unbreakable Resolve, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. After weeks of coordinated assaults, Council forces had finally driven the Vectar out of the Tarvos system. What remained of it? "Casualties?" he asked his tactical officer. 17,000, General. Another 35,000 wounded. We lost 8 capital ships and 23 support vessels. Cromath closed his eyes. When humanity had defended this region, they'd held back Vectar incursions with minimal losses, using speed and tactical brilliance to outmaneuver larger forces. The Council's approach was cruder. They simply threw numbers at the problem until it went away. And the Vectar? Retreating to the Helion border. They'll regroup and try again in a few months. Of course they will. Cromath pulled up the strategic map. Red zones marked hostile territory. Yellow zones showed contested space. Blue zones indicated Council control. There was far more red and yellow than blue, and the colors were spreading. "General," his communications officer called out. "We're receiving reports from the Kelrathi sector. The Zinthari are pushing into the former human colonies again. The 6th Fleet is requesting support. Tell them to hold position. We don't have ships to spare. Sir, if the 6th falls back, we'll lose 3 major systems. I'm aware of the strategic implications." Cromath snapped, then took a breath. "I'm sorry. Send what support we can. But make it clear we're stretched to our limit." His first officer, a Theranian veteran named Salvix, approached. "We're not going to win this, are we? Not like this." "No," Cromath admitted. "The humans didn't just provide ships and soldiers. They provided speed, adaptability, innovation. They could be everywhere at once because they thought differently than we do. We're trying to replace genius with brute force, and it's not working. Then what do we do?" Cromath pulled up a classified file, one of many the Council had discovered in the human archives. "We learn. The humans left detailed tactical analyses, strategic frameworks, training protocols. Everything they knew about defending council space. They didn't have to leave these files. They could have kept their knowledge as leverage or simple spite. But they left us the tools to survive without them. Will it be enough? Eventually. Maybe. If we have time to adapt before our enemies overwhelm us. Cromath highlighted several critical systems. The problem is every hostile force in the galaxy sees the same thing. A weakened council ripe for conquest. We're not fighting one war, we're fighting a dozen simultaneously, and each one drains resources we desperately need for the others. An urgent alert blared across the bridge. Cromath pulled up the notification and felt his blood run cold. What is it? Salvix asked. The Morthani Consortium has officially seceded from the Council. They're declaring independence and claiming exclusive rights to all territories within their borders. They can't do that. They're bound by the Council Charter. The Charter only works if people believe in it, Cromath interrupted. And right now nobody believes the Council can protect them. The Morthani just became the first to jump ship, but they won't be the last. He was right. Over the next week, 12 more species withdrew from the Council. Some sought independence. Others formed regional alliances. A few simply went silent, retreating into isolation. The Galactic Council, which had stood for 3 millennia, was disintegrating. Chancellor Mariah convened an emergency session with her inner circle. Thex Nor, Cromath, Zenith, and a handful of other trusted advisors. The mood was grim. The Council is collapsing, Mariah stated flatly. Not from external pressure, from internal loss of faith. We're down to 196 member species, and 43 more have submitted withdrawal notices. Can we legally prevent them from leaving? Asked Councillor Orathane, a practical-minded administrator. Legally? Yes. Practically? Mariah shook her head. If we try to force compliance, we'll trigger armed rebellions. We're not in a position to fight our own members while also defending against external threats. Then we let them go, Thex Nor said heavily. We accept that the Council as we knew it is finished. And rebuild what exactly? Zenith asked. A smaller council with fewer resources and less territory? A better council, Cromath said. Look at who's staying versus who's leaving. The species departing are the ones who only joined for economic or military benefits. They were allies of convenience. The ones staying are those who actually believe in cooperation, mutual defense, shared ideals. Mariah studied the list. He was right. The core species remaining were those who had worked most closely with humanity, who had learned from their example. It's not enough, Orathane objected. Even with true believers, we don't have the industrial capacity or military strength to survive. Then we do what humanity did, Thex Nor said quietly. We become efficient. We become clever. We work with what we have instead of wishing for what we've lost. He pulled up the human tactical manuals they'd been studying. The humans didn't win through overwhelming force. They won through speed, coordination, and fighting smarter than their enemies. Their ships were faster but not stronger. Their tactics were innovative but not revolutionary. They just used everything better than anyone else. And you think we can learn to do the same? Zenith asked skeptically. We have to, Cromath said. Look at this. He showed them a training schedule humanity had developed for integrating multi-species forces. The humans spent decades figuring out how to make different species work together effectively. They documented everything: communication protocols, command structures, tactical doctrines adapted for different physiologies and psychology. It's all here. How long to implement? Mariah asked. Full integration? Years. But basic competency? We could see improvements in months if we commit to it. Mariah made her decision. Do it. Restructure the entire military along human principles. And send a message to all remaining member species. The Council is being reformed from the ground up. We're going back to our founding principles: cooperation, mutual protection, shared prosperity. Anyone who wants to stay will be valued. Anyone who wants to leave is free to go. But we're done being a bureaucratic nightmare that takes advantage of the good faith of our members. That's quite an admission, Orathane noted. It's the truth. Humanity left because we failed them. The others are leaving because we're failing them too. If we don't change fundamentally, we deserve to collapse. Mariah straightened her shoulders. But if we do change, if we become what we always should have been, maybe we can build something worth preserving. Without humanity's help? Thex Nor asked. Because of humanity's example, Mariah corrected. They showed us what was possible. Now we have to prove we learned the lesson. 3 months of brutal reforms followed. The council military was restructured, bureaucratic bloat was eliminated, response protocols were streamlined. Species that stayed found themselves in a leaner, more responsive organization. Species that left found themselves facing the same hostile forces that had been held back by council protection, and discovered that independence was expensive. Some returned humbled. The council accepted them back without gloating, according to the new protocols. The Vectar launched another major offensive, expecting easy victories. Instead, they ran into a council military that had finally learned to fight like humans, with coordinated strikes, rapid repositioning, and tactical flexibility. The Vectar retreated, surprised and bloodied. Raiders attempting to plunder former human systems found themselves facing the new Council Guard, a multi-species force trained in human doctrine, defending the territory humanity had protected with a ferocity that matched human determination. Slowly, painfully, the Council stabilized. It was smaller than before, only 173 member species remained. It was weaker in raw numbers, fewer ships, fewer resources, less territory. But it was stronger where it mattered, in purpose, in efficiency, in mutual trust. "We're not the council that humanity left," Cromath reported to Mariah 6 months after the Exodus. "We're something different. Smaller but more focused. Less powerful but more united." "Will it be enough?" Mariah asked. "To survive? Probably. To thrive." He shrugged. "That depends on whether we remember why we reformed. The danger is that once the crisis passes, we'll slip back into old habits. Then we ensure the crisis never passes," Thexnor said, joining the conversation. "Not by creating problems but by maintaining standards. The Vashan protocols aren't temporary measures, they're the new foundation. We enforce them rigorously, not just when it's convenient." Zenith appeared on the display from the Intelligence Center. "Speaking of the Vashan protocols, I've been analyzing the supply caches humanity left for us. There's something interesting in the data." "What kind of interesting?" Mariah asked. "The caches weren't just emergency supplies. They contained training materials, technical documentation, even entertainment media. It's like, they left us a time capsule. Everything we'd need to understand them better, even after they were gone." Thexnor's scale shifted to thoughtful purple. "They wanted us to remember them accurately, not as legends or myths, but as people who tried their best in an imperfect system." "There's more," Zenith continued. "Some of the documentation contains what I can only describe as advice. Lessons they learned the hard way, mistakes they made, solutions they found. It's like they're teaching us from beyond the void." Mariah felt emotion tighten her chest. "Even in leaving, they tried to help us." "That was always their nature," Cromath said quietly. "The Council didn't deserve humanity. But maybe, if we work hard enough, our successors will deserve whatever species comes along next with that same idealistic spirit. If any ever do," Orathane added. "Humanity might have been unique. Or they might be out there in uncharted space finding other species like themselves," Thexnor suggested. "Building a new alliance based on the principles we failed to uphold. I hope they are. I hope they find exactly what they were looking for." Mariah accessed the long-range sensors, pointing them toward the direction humanity had traveled. 15,000 light-years away and growing more distant every day, beyond the range of their fastest ships, beyond the reach of their most powerful transmitters. Gone. But not forgotten. Never forgotten. "Document everything," Mariah ordered. "Every reform, every improvement, every lesson learned. When future generations ask about humanity, I want them to understand not just what we lost, but why we lost them and how we changed because of it." "A warning to our descendants?" Zenith asked. "A promise," Mariah corrected. "A promise that we'll never take for granted the species who believe in us. A promise that we'll be worthy of the trust they place in the Council. A promise that humanity's sacrifice won't be forgotten or wasted." She looked at each of her advisors in turn. "We can't bring them back. We can't undo our failures. But we can make sure their departure meant something. We can become the Council they deserved from the beginning, even if they're not here to see it." "To humanity," Cromath said, raising his hand in a gesture of respect. "To humanity," the others echoed. In the silence that followed, each of them contemplated the weight of the legacy they'd inherited, not through gift but through loss. Not through triumph but through failure. It was a heavy burden. But perhaps that was appropriate. Light things are easily forgotten. Weight, however, leaves an impression that lasts. The Galactic Council would carry the weight of humanity's absence for generations to come. And maybe, just maybe, that weight would keep them honest. Echoes in the dark. 2 years after humanity's exodus, Captain Jasper Kane stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Pathfinder, studying the sensor data with growing excitement. Confirm those readings, he ordered his science officer, a young woman named Tessa Ryan who had been born aboard the Exodus fleet and had never seen old Earth or Council space. Confirmed, Captain. Habitable planet, oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, liquid water, complex biosignatures. It's perfect. Kane smiled. In 2 years of traveling through uncharted space, the Exodus fleet had found dozens of interesting worlds, but few suitable for colonization. This one was special. Send the data to Commandant Vashon. Tell her we found New Haven. The name had been chosen years ago, back when humanity was still planning their exodus in secret. Whatever world they settled would be called New Haven. A fresh start, a place where they could build according to their own values without compromise. Within hours, the entire Exodus fleet altered course toward the new world. 300 Ark ships, carrying 8 million souls, converging on a planet that had never known intelligent life. Commandant Lyria Vashon stood in the command center of the flagship Exodus Prime, watching the planet grow larger on the display. She was older now than when she delivered that final message to the Council. 2 years of traveling through the unknown had aged her more than the previous decade of service. But she didn't regret it. Not for a moment. Director Chorus, she called to her diplomatic officer. What's the Colonization Committee's assessment? Naya Chorus pulled up the detailed scans. Continental masses with diverse biomes. No intelligent species, but complex ecosystems will need to study carefully before terraforming or large-scale settlement. Mineral wealth exceeds our projections. And she paused, smiling. The star is stable, the planet's orbit is nearly perfect, and preliminary atmospheric sampling suggests we won't need extensive adaptations. It's too good, muttered Admiral Torvin, ever the pessimist. There has to be a catch. The catch is that it's 15,000 light-years from Council space, surrounded by unexplored systems, with no allies and no support network, Vashon said dryly. Beyond that, yes, we got lucky. Not luck, said Chief Engineer Davos Merrick, a grizzled veteran who had designed half the Exodus fleet's critical systems. We traveled farther than any Council species because we had better drives. We searched more thoroughly because we had better sensors. We found the perfect world because we didn't stop at good enough. Vashon nodded. It was true. The technology humanity had developed for their exodus was decades ahead of what they'd let the Council see. Not out of malice, but because they'd known that truly leaving required capabilities no one expected them to possess. Begin colonization protocols, Vashon ordered. Phase 1. Orbital surveys and automated probe deployment. Phase 2. Establish initial ground base. Phase 3. Begin systematic settlement of the 3 primary continents. We do this right, slow, careful, respectful of the existing ecosystems. That could take decades, Chorus noted. We have time, Vashon said. We're not running anymore. We're not waiting for committee approval. We're home. We can take as long as we need to do things properly. Over the following months, humanity began the delicate process of settling their new world. They learned from the mistakes of Earth's history. No mindless exploitation, no careless disruption of native life. They integrated themselves into the planet's existing patterns, adapting their settlements to work with nature rather than against it. And they named it Terra Nova, New Earth, in the old Latin tongue that few still spoke but all remembered. Meanwhile, in a research facility aboard one of the Ark ships, Dr. Helena Vorsic was making a discovery that would reshape humanity's understanding of their new region of space. Captain Kane, you need to see this, she transmitted to the Pathfinder, which was conducting surveys of nearby systems. When Kane arrived at her laboratory, Vorsic pulled up a holographic display showing complex mathematical patterns. We've been analyzing the gravitational anomalies we detected in Sector 447. They're not natural. Kane leaned forward. Artificial. Definitely. And the engineering involved. Vorsic's eyes shone with scientific wonder. It's beyond anything I've ever seen. Beyond anything the Council ever developed. These structures are manipulating spacetime itself on a massive scale. Structures? You mean there's more than one? At least 17 in this sector alone. Vorsic overlaid a star chart. They're positioned in a network pattern like some kind of ancient infrastructure. And based on our dating methods, they're old. Really old. Millions of years, possibly. Kane felt his pulse quicken. A precursor civilization? Or multiple civilizations? The engineering styles vary between structure clusters. It's like we've stumbled into a galactic graveyard, the remnants of species that existed long before the Council, long before humanity, maybe even before the current galactic structure. Are any of them active? Not that we can detect. But Captain, if we can study these structures, understand the technology behind them. Vorsic didn't need to finish. The implications were staggering. Kane immediately transmitted the findings to Vashan, who convened the Fleet Council, the governing body representing all the major departments and factions within the Exodus fleet. This changes our mission, Vashan said once everyone had reviewed Vorsic's data. We came here to escape the Council and build a new home. But we've discovered something that could reshape our understanding of the galaxy itself. We should focus on colonization, argued Councillor Brennick, who represented the agricultural collectives. We finally found a perfect world. Why go chasing ancient ruins? Because knowledge is power, countered Admiral Torvin. The Council held technological superiority over hostile species because humanity shared our innovations. Without us, they're vulnerable. If we can unlock whatever technology built these structures, we ensure our own survival, and potentially gain the capability to help others if we choose. Help the Council? Brennick's voice dripped with skepticism. After how they treated us? Not the Council specifically, Director Chorus interjected. But there are innocent species out there. The Theronians who fought alongside us. The Kelzathi who were always fair in trade. Individual people who didn't deserve to suffer for their leaders' failures. We left for a reason, Captain Kyra Winters pointed out. The military officer had lost family in the Zinthari raids that the Council ignored. Going back even to help means reopening wounds. No one's suggesting we go back, Vashan said firmly. But the galaxy is vast. If we gain knowledge and capabilities from studying these structures, we have options. We can defend ourselves if threats find us. We can explore farther, find other isolated species who might share our values. We can build something entirely new. Or, said Chief Engineer Merrick slowly, we can do what humanity has always done. We can learn. We can grow. We can face the unknown with curiosity instead of fear. That's who we are. Not a species that ran away, a species that sought better horizons. The debate continued for hours, but eventually a consensus emerged. Humanity would settle Terra Nova while simultaneously exploring the ancient structures. They would split their focus, dedicating resources to both immediate survival and long-term advancement. It was ambitious. It was risky. It was very human. 6 months later, the first settlement on Terra Nova was thriving. The city of Vashan, named after the commandant despite her protests, housed 50,000 people and was growing steadily. Agricultural zones produced abundant food. Factories built from the Ark ships' recycled materials began producing the tools and infrastructure needed for expansion. And in orbit, a fleet of research vessels studied the ancient structures, slowly unraveling their secrets. Dr. Vorsic made the breakthrough on a quiet Tuesday morning, working alone in her lab while most of the fleet slept. "Oh my God," she whispered, staring at the decoded data. "Oh my God." She immediately contacted Vashan, not caring that it was 3 a.m. fleet time. "Commandant, I've translated some of the structural encoding. It's not just infrastructure. It's a message." Vashan, who had learned to sleep lightly after 2 decades of military command, was instantly alert. What kind of message? A warning. And an invitation. Vorsic transmitted the full data. These structures were built by something called the Concordant, a union of ancient species. They achieved technological transcendence millions of years ago, but before they evolved whatever they did, they built these networks throughout the galaxy. For what purpose? To guide younger species. The structures we found are like signposts. They're designed to be discovered by civilizations that reach a certain level of capability. And once discovered, they unlock access to information and technology. It's a test and a gift combined. Vashan felt chills run down her spine. What kind of information? Everything, Vorsic breathed. Physics beyond our understanding. Engineering principles that could revolutionize faster than light travel. Medical knowledge that could extend lifespans. Social structures that maintain stability across millennia. It's all here, encoded in these structures, waiting for species wise enough and worthy enough to access it. Worthy enough? The Concordant left safeguards. The technology only unlocks for species that demonstrate certain qualities: cooperation, ethical consideration, long-term thinking. Species driven purely by conquest or exploitation can't access the deeper layers. Vashon understood immediately why humanity had been able to decode what the Council never found. We passed the test. Apparently. And there's more. Vorsic pulled up a galactic map. These structures exist throughout the galaxy. The ones we found are just a small network. There are hundreds, maybe thousands more. And they're all connected. Connected how? Instantaneous communication across any distance. Not faster than light, simultaneous. The Concordant achieved true quantum entanglement on a galactic scale. The implications crashed over Vashon like a wave. Humanity could potentially communicate across the entire galaxy instantly. They could access ancient knowledge that would leap their civilization forward by millennia. They could become something the galaxy had never seen, a young species with ancient wisdom. But there was another implication, one that Vorsic voiced hesitantly. Commandant, if these structures exist throughout the galaxy, there are probably some in Council space too. And the Council never found them? They might have found them. But based on my understanding of the safeguards, they couldn't access them. The Concordance test would have rejected a civilization that was politically dysfunctional, that ignored member species' needs, that prioritized bureaucracy over justice. But humanity, exiled and alone, passed the test the Council would have failed. Vashon laughed, the sound bitter and sweet at once. The irony is almost poetic. What do we do with this knowledge? Vorsic asked. Vashon didn't answer immediately. She stood, pacing her quarters, thinking through the cascading consequences of their discovery. Finally, she made her decision, not as a military commander, but as the leader of a species seeking its place in a much larger story. We study the structures. We learn everything we can. And then, she paused. We decide as a people what to do with it. This isn't my choice alone. We left the Council because we were ignored. We won't make decisions about humanity's future without consulting humanity itself. A referendum? A full democratic process. Every adult on the Exodus fleet gets a vote. Do we keep this knowledge to ourselves? Do we share it with other species we might meet? Do we ever possibly consider sharing it with the Council that failed us? These questions will shape our civilization for millennia. Everyone deserves a voice. It was the most human response possible. When faced with power beyond imagination, their first instinct was to ensure it was used wisely and democratically. I'll begin preparing the information packets, Vorsic said, so people can make informed decisions. After the call ended, Vashon stood at her viewport, looking down at Terra Nova spinning slowly below. Humanity had fled the Council seeking freedom and self-determination. Instead, they'd stumbled into something far greater. An inheritance from species so advanced they'd literally transcended physical existence, leaving behind gifts for those who proved worthy. And humanity, broken-hearted and exiled, had somehow proven worthy. Wherever you are, Vashon murmured, thinking of the Council they'd left behind, I hope you've learned the lessons we tried to teach you. Because someday someone will find the concordant structures in your space. And when they do, you'll face the same test we did. She wondered if they would pass. But more than that, she wondered what humanity would choose to become, now that they held the keys to wonders beyond imagination. The vote would take months to organize. The debate would be fierce. The decision would echo through history. But that was fine. Humanity had time. For the first time in 2 centuries, they had all the time in the world. And they were free to use it as they chose. The choice and the legacy. 9 months after discovering the concordant structures, humanity held the most important vote in their history. Every adult on Terra Nova and across the Exodus fleet, nearly 6 million people, had received comprehensive briefings on the concordant technology. They'd seen demonstrations of what they could achieve with it. They'd debated the ethical implications in town halls, digital forums, and countless private conversations. Now the moment of decision had arrived. Commandant Vashon stood before the assembly hall in New Vashon. The city council had officially named it that despite her continued protests, where representatives from every settlement and ark ship had gathered. The vote would be conducted simultaneously across all human habitats, with results tallied in real time. 3 questions, Vashon announced, her voice steady. First, do we actively pursue study and integration of concordant technology? Second, if we achieve significant capabilities, do we share this knowledge with other species we may encounter in our exploration? Third, do we ever, under any circumstances, consider sharing this knowledge with the Galactic Council? The voting began. Vashon watched the numbers scroll across her display, her heart pounding despite her outward calm. Question 1, 94% in favor. Humanity would embrace the concordant legacy. Question 2, 87% in favor. Humanity would share knowledge with species they deemed worthy, after careful evaluation. Question 3. The numbers came more slowly. This was the divisive question, the one that had sparked the most heated debates. Some argued the council deserved nothing after how they'd treated humanity. Others insisted that innocent people in council space shouldn't suffer for their leaders' failures. Finally, 51% in favor with strict conditions. A bare majority, but a majority nonetheless. Vashon read the attached conditions aloud. We will share concordant knowledge with the Galactic Council only if 1. They demonstrate sustained commitment to the reforms they implemented after our departure. 2. They formally acknowledge their failures toward humanity and implement safeguards to prevent similar treatment of other species. 3. They request our assistance through proper diplomatic channels, treating humanity as an equal partner, not a resource to be exploited. And 4. No fewer than 20 years have passed from our departure, ensuring their reforms are genuine and lasting, not desperate measures adopted under crisis. She looked out at the assembly. Humanity has spoken. We will become students of the Concordant. We will be teachers to those who prove worthy. And we will, perhaps, someday give the Council a chance at redemption, if they earn it. The hall erupted in mixed reactions, cheers from some, protests from others, but underlying it all was a sense of purpose. Humanity had made their choice democratically, with full information and open debate. Whatever came next would be a decision they all owned. 5 years later, the transformation was visible. Terra Nova had grown from a single settlement to a thriving civilization of 3 million, spread across 4 continents. Cities rose in harmony with the natural landscape. Farms produced abundant food using techniques that enhanced rather than depleted the soil. Factories manufactured goods with zero-waste processes learned from concordant archives. In orbit, humanity's ships had been upgraded with technology that made them faster, more efficient, and more powerful than anything the Council possessed. Not weapons, humanity had chosen to focus on exploration, medicine, and engineering rather than military applications. But the capability for defense existed should it ever be needed. Dr. Vorsic, now the director of the Concordant Research Institute, stood before a holographic display showing the network of ancient structures they'd activated. We've made contact, she announced to the assembled leadership. Contact. Admiral Torvin's eyebrows shot up. With what? Not what. Who? Vorsic's smile was radiant. There are other species out here, far from Council space. Some are young civilizations just developing faster than light travel. Others are more advanced but isolated like we were. The Concordant network allows communication between worthy species across vast distances. How many? Asked Director Chorus. 17 confirmed so far. Each one has accessed at least one concordant structure and been judged worthy. They're scattered across this entire spiral arm of the galaxy, thousands of light years apart, but connected through the network. Captain Kane, now an admiral commanding humanity's exploration fleet, leaned forward. What are they like? Diverse. Some are silicon-based. Some exist primarily as energy patterns. Some are collective consciousnesses. But they all share certain characteristics: cooperation, ethical consideration, long-term thinking. The qualities the Concordant valued. And they know about humanity? We've been exchanging basic information. They're curious about us as we are about them. Several have proposed an eventual meeting, once we've all had time to understand each other better through the network. Vashon felt a strange emotion, hope mixed with caution. We left the Council seeking species who shared our values. Instead of finding them, we found a way to connect with them across the void. There's something else, Vorsic added. Some of these species have concordant structures near what they describe as a large, politically complex civilization that couldn't access the technology. The descriptions matched the Galactic Council. The room went quiet. So the Council does have concordant structures in their space, Chorus said slowly. They just can't use them. Not unless they change fundamentally, Vorsic confirmed. The structures respond to collective civilization characteristics. Individual enlightened people aren't enough. The entire society has to demonstrate the required qualities. 20 years, Vashon said, reminding everyone of the time frame humanity had set. We gave them 20 years to prove their reforms are real. We're only 5 years in. And if they fail? Torvin asked. Then they fail, Vashon said simply. We're not responsible for saving them anymore. We're not responsible for carrying civilizations that won't carry themselves. Our responsibility now is to build something better here and share it with those who deserve it. Meanwhile, 15,000 light-years away, the Galactic Council was entering its 6th year of reformation. Chancellor Mariah, now serving her 2nd term under the new streamlined election protocols, reviewed the latest progress reports with Ambassador Thex Nor and General Cromuth. The council had stabilized, barely. They controlled less territory than before, but what they held was better defended and more justly governed. The Vashan protocols have become standard across all member species, Mariah reported. Response times to grievances have improved by 300%. Member satisfaction surveys show significantly higher trust in council governance. We're becoming what humanity asked us to be, Thex Nor said, his scales cycling through contemplative colors. The question is whether we can maintain it once the crisis pressure eases. That's always the question, Cromuth agreed. Any organization can reform under threat. Staying reformed when things are comfortable, that's the real test. Mariah pulled up a report that made her chest tighten with emotion. I received this yesterday. It's from the Theranian Confederation. They've commissioned a memorial. The hologram showed a massive structure, a monument depicting a human figure standing protectively before representatives of various council species. The inscription read, "To humanity, who gave everything and asked for nothing. May we be worthy of their memory." It's beautiful, Thex Nor whispered. It's devastating, Cromuth corrected. Because it's a memorial to the living. Humanity isn't dead, they're out there somewhere, thriving without us. And we're building monuments to mourn the relationship we killed through our own negligence. Perhaps that's appropriate, Mariah said. The relationship is dead. We killed it. The memorial isn't for humanity, it's for us to remember what we lost and why. An alert chimed. Mariah pulled it up, then froze. What is it? Thex Nor asked. Long-range sensors have detected something. A signal pattern we don't recognize, emanating from the Helix Nebula. It's structured, definitely artificial, but not matching any known species communication protocols. Cromuth frowned. The Helix Nebula is near where humanity established some of their deep space monitoring stations before the Exodus. Could it be related? Analyzing now, reported Captain Zenith, joining the communication. Her 6 eyes blinked in sequence, her sign of genuine surprise. This is incredible. The signal is coming from an artificial structure we never detected before. It appears to have been hidden until recently when it activated? I'm not sure what triggered it. Can you decode the signal? Mariah asked. Working on it, but the mathematics are unlike anything in our databases. Wait. Zenith's voice took on a note of awe. Chancellor, I think this might be ancient. Really ancient. The structural composition of the source, it's using principles of quantum mechanics we haven't even theorized yet. Thex Nor's scales flashed with realization. The humans found something. That's why they left. Not just because of us, but because they discovered something out there. Or they became worthy of discovering something, Mariah corrected, understanding dawning. What if there's technology in the galaxy that only reveals itself to species with certain characteristics? What if humanity qualified and we don't? The implications hung heavy in the air. Keep working on that signal, Cromuth ordered Zenith, and expand scans to nearby sectors. If there's one structure, there might be more. Over the following months, Council scientists discovered 3 more ancient structures in their territory. Each one was inactive, unresponsive to all attempts at communication or activation. They could study the exterior, but the technology inside remained locked, like a door that wouldn't recognize their key. It's judging us, Mariah said during a late-night session with her advisors. These structures are still functional, we can detect power signatures. They're just not responding to us. Because we don't meet whatever criteria they require, Thex Nor finished. The humans met it, Cromuth said with certainty. That's why they could afford to leave. They found something that made council membership irrelevant. Then we work harder, Mariah declared. Not to unlock these structures, though that would be valuable, but to become the civilization that deserves to unlock them. We continue the reforms. We deepen our commitment to justice and cooperation. We prove that we learned from humanity's departure. And if we never unlock them? Asked Counselor Orathane. Then we still become better for trying, Mariah said firmly. That's the point. The structures aren't the goal, they're a measuring stick. And right now we're being measured and found wanting. Let's change that. 15 years after humanity's exodus, Captain Tessa Rhine, now commanding her own vessel, led an exploration mission to a distant system flagged by the Concordant Network as potentially significant. What she found changed everything. Commandant Vashan, she transmitted back to Terra Nova. You need to see this. The hologram showed a planet, but not just any planet. This world bore the unmistakable signs of advanced civilization. Cities that stretched across continents. Orbital structures of stunning complexity. And strangest of all, the architectural style was hauntingly familiar. Is that? Vashan began. Human design principles, Tessa confirmed. But evolved. Changed. It's like looking at what humanity might have become if we'd developed in isolation for 10,000 years. That's impossible. We've only been away from Earth for... Vashan stopped. You're saying this isn't humanity? No, ma'am. It's not. But whoever built this civilization used similar problem-solving approaches, similar aesthetic choices, similar social structures. It's like parallel evolution but for culture and technology. Dr. Vorsik's voice joined the call. Captain Rhine, scan for concordant structures in that system. Tessa adjusted her sensors. 3 structures. All active. And I'm detecting communication traffic between the planet and the structures. They're using them. Then that civilization passed the concordant test too, Vorsik said. And if their development parallels humanity's, maybe that's not coincidence. Maybe the concordant specifically guided species with certain characteristics. Like shepherds, Vashan murmured. The concordant weren't just leaving technology behind. They were cultivating certain types of civilizations, hoping we'd eventually meet and cooperate. Should I make contact? Tessa asked. Vashan considered. Humanity had spent 15 years studying concordant technology, growing as a civilization, building relationships with other worthy species through the network. They'd become teachers and students in equal measure, sharing knowledge with 7 other civilizations while learning from 9 more. They were ready. Yes, Vashan decided. Follow first contact protocols. Be respectful, be cautious, but be open. If they're like us, they'll appreciate honesty. The first contact went better than anyone dared hope. The civilization, they called themselves the Varen, were indeed similar to humanity in fundamental ways. They valued cooperation, innovation, and ethical consideration. They'd accessed the concordant network 2 centuries earlier and had been steadily growing in knowledge and capability. And they'd been waiting, hoping to find other species like themselves. We thought we might be alone, said Overseer Nix, the Varen's equivalent to Vashan. The translation software rendered her 3-throated voice into standard human speech with remarkable clarity. The concordant network told us there were others, but you're the first we've actually met. We know the feeling, Vashan replied warmly. We spent 2 centuries in an alliance that never understood us. Finding you, finding the network, finding species that share our values, it's everything we hoped for when we left. You left an alliance? Nix's primary eyes widened, apparently a universal sign of surprise. May I ask why? Vashan told her. The entire story, the Council's failures, humanity's service, the breaking point that led to Exodus. She held nothing back. When she finished, Nix was silent for a long moment. Then, we had something similar. A confederation of nearby species. We tried to lead by example to show them cooperation could work. They took our contributions and gave nothing in return. Eventually we stopped trying to change them and focused on our own growth. Did you ever regret it? Vashan asked. Every day at first. Now. Nix's expression softened. Now I'm grateful. Because it led us here. To the concordant network. To meeting you. Sometimes the best decision is the one that hurts most to make. Over the following months, humanity and the Varen established formal relations. They weren't identical civilizations. There were cultural differences, different approaches to governance, different priorities. But the foundation was the same. A belief that civilization should serve its people, not the other way around. It was the alliance humanity had always wanted. The partnership they'd sought with the Council but never found. We're building something new, Vashan reported to the assembled leadership of Terra Nova. Not a council. Not an empire. Something the concordant network might have intended all along. A loose federation of worthy species, connected by shared values and mutual respect. How many species are we in contact with now? Asked Admiral Torvin. 23 confirmed. Another 47 have accessed concordant structures but haven't joined the network dialogue yet. At our current rate, we could have 100 species in active communication within a decade. And the Council? Director Chorus asked quietly. Vashan checked the chronometer. 19 years, 7 months since our departure. In 5 months, our self-imposed deadline expires. If the Council has maintained their reforms, if they've genuinely changed, if they reach out to us respectfully, we've committed to considering their request for knowledge sharing. Do you think they will? Asked Chief Engineer Merrick. I don't know, Vashon admitted. But I hope so. Not for our sake, we've moved beyond needing them. But for the sake of the good people still in council space. For species like the Theronians who always treated us fairly. For individuals who didn't deserve to be punished for their leaders' failures. And if they haven't reformed? Torvin pressed. Then we leave them to their fate, Vashon said firmly. We can't save species that won't save themselves. That was the lesson we learned the hard way. You can only help those who are willing to change. 20 years to the day after humanity's exodus, the Galactic Council received a transmission on the old human frequencies. Chancellor Mariah, now in her 4th term, the reformed council having kept her in leadership through 3 successive elections, opened the message with trembling hands. Beside her stood Ambassador Thex Nor, General Cromoth, and Captain Zenith. All of them had aged in the 2 decades since humanity's departure, carrying the weight of reformation and the scars of the intervening conflicts. The message was audio only, the voice familiar yet changed. This is Commandant Lyria Vashon of the Terran Federation. 20 years ago, humanity left the Galactic Council without farewell. We have watched from afar as you reformed your institutions and restructured your governance. We have monitored your commitment to the Vashon protocols and observed your treatment of member species. Mariah held her breath. You have changed, Vashon continued. Not perfectly. Not completely. But genuinely. You have become closer to what the Council should always have been. Therefore, in accordance with the terms humanity set 2 decades ago, we are willing to open dialogue regarding limited information exchange. Tears rolled down Mariah's translucent cheeks. However, Vashon's voice carried a note of steel. Understand this, humanity is not returning to the Council. We have found our place among civilizations that share our values. We have built alliances based on mutual respect rather than convenience. What we offer now is the opportunity to learn from us as equals, through proper diplomatic channels. We will transmit coordinates for a neutral meeting location. Send ambassadors empowered to negotiate in good faith. Do not send bureaucrats looking for committee approval. Do not send politicians seeking advantage. Send people who genuinely want to build a better future. If you do, we will teach you what we've learned from the Concordant legacy. Not everything, some knowledge must be earned through your own growth. But enough to help you survive and thrive in a galaxy more complex than you currently understand. There was a pause. You failed us once, Vashon said, her voice softening. But you learned from that failure. That takes courage. We are willing to give you a chance to prove that your reforms are permanent, not temporary. What you do with this chance is up to you. Vashon out. The transmission ended. The 4 council leaders sat in silence, each processing the magnitude of the moment. She's offering us redemption, Thex Nor finally said, his scales shimmering with emotion. She's offering us a test, Cromoth corrected. A chance to prove we've really changed. If we approach this meeting the way we approached humanity's needs 20 years ago, with committees, politics, and bureaucracy, we'll fail. Again. Then we don't, Mariah said, her voice firm despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. We send our best people. People who believe in the reforms, who understand what we lost and why. People who can negotiate as equals without needing permission for every decision. Who do you have in mind? Zenith asked. Mariah looked at each of them in turn. You 3. And myself. The 4 of us have carried the weight of reformation for 20 years. We understand what's at stake. We can speak for the Council because we are the Council. The new Council, the one that humanity's absence forced us to become. It's risky, Thex Nor noted. Sending the entire senior leadership into what might be hostile territory. Humanity isn't hostile, Cromoth said with certainty. If they wanted revenge, they had 20 years to plan it. This is genuine. They're offering us exactly what they offered the Council for 2 centuries, help if we're willing to accept it with humility and grace. Then we accept, Mariah decided. Prepare the fastest ship in the fleet. We leave as soon as possible. And someone find me everything we have on proper diplomatic protocol for approaching a species that has every right to hate us. They don't hate us, Zenith said quietly. That's what makes this so hard. If they hated us, we could understand it. But they've moved beyond hate. They've built something better and they're still willing to help us despite everything. That kind of compassion. She trailed off. Is what we should have shown them from the beginning, Mariah finished. And now we get to see if we've learned enough to deserve a second chance. 3 months later, in a neutral system exactly halfway between Terra Nova and Council space, 2 ships met. The council vessel carried the 4 leaders who had shepherded reformation. The Terran ship carried Commandant Vashin, Director Chorus, Admiral Torvin, and Dr. Vorsic. They met aboard a temporary station constructed specifically for this meeting, built cooperatively using both Council and Terran technology, a symbol of what might be possible. When Mariah first saw Vashin in person, she barely recognized her. The human had aged, yes, but more than that, she had changed. There was a confidence, a peace that hadn't been there 20 years ago. She stood like someone who had found her place in the universe. Chancellor Mariah, Vashin said, extending her hand in the old human gesture of greeting. It's been a long time. Mariah took the hand, feeling the warmth of human skin for the first time in 2 decades. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Thank you for giving us a chance we don't deserve. Let's not start with guilt, Vashin said gently. You've spent 20 years reforming the council. That's not nothing. We're here to look forward, not backward. They sat, humans and council representatives, together again but on entirely different terms. First, Vashin said, I want you to understand what we've found. We're not alone in this galaxy. There are civilizations scattered across uncharted space, species the council has never encountered. Some are more advanced than either of us. Some are just developing. But they all share certain characteristics. She activated a hologram showing the Concordant network. This is ancient technology, left behind by species that transcended physical existence millions of years ago. They created a test for younger civilizations. If you demonstrate cooperation, ethical consideration, and long-term thinking as a society, not just as individuals, the technology activates for you. It offers knowledge, capability, and connection with other worthy species. And humanity passed this test? Thexnor asked. We did, Vashin confirmed. The Varen did. 23 other species did. The Council. She paused. Has the potential to pass it. But you're not there yet. What are we missing? Cromath asked bluntly. Vorsic pulled up data comparing Council characteristics to successful Concordant activations. It's not one thing. It's sustained behavior patterns over time. The reforms you've implemented are excellent, but they're relatively recent. The Concordant structures respond to civilizations that have maintained ethical governance for generations, not just decades. So we need to prove our reforms are permanent, Mariah said. Exactly, Chorus confirmed. Which is why we're not offering full access to Concordant knowledge. But we can share some of what we've learned. Medical technology that could save millions of lives. Environmental engineering that could restore damaged worlds. Communication protocols that could reduce conflicts. These aren't the deepest secrets of the Concordant legacy, but they're enough to make a significant difference. In exchange for what? Asked Zenith, ever the intelligence officer looking for hidden costs. Vashin smiled. In exchange for maintaining your reforms. Continuing to treat member species fairly. Acting as partners instead of bureaucratic overlords. Essentially, in exchange for being what you've proven you can be over the past 20 years. That's all? Thexnor's scales flickered with surprise. That's everything, Vashin corrected. Because if you can maintain it, you'll eventually become worthy of the deeper knowledge on your own. The Concordant structures in Council space will activate when your civilization truly changes at its core. Our help is a bridge to get you there, not a replacement for doing the work. Why help us at all? Cromath asked. After how we treated you, you'd be justified in letting us fail. Vashin was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. We left because we had to. For our own survival, our own sanity, our own future. But we never stopped caring about the individuals in Council space who didn't deserve to suffer. And more than that, we've learned something important over the past 20 years. What's that? Mariah asked. Civilization is hard, Vashin said simply. Maintaining justice across multiple species with different needs and values? It's incredibly difficult. We see that now that we're building our own federation with the Varen and others. You're going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. The difference is whether you learned from them. You learned, Chorus added. That's why we're here. Not because you're perfect, but because you demonstrated the capacity for growth. That's the most important characteristic. Not being flawless, but being willing to improve. The negotiations continued for 3 days. In the end, the agreement was simple. The Terran Federation would provide targeted knowledge transfers to the Galactic Council. In return, the Council would maintain its reforms and provide regular updates on member species treatment. Independent observers, chosen by both parties, would verify compliance. It wasn't a full alliance. It wasn't friendship. But it was a foundation, a chance to build something better than what had existed before. One more thing, Vashon said as they prepared to depart. The memorial the Theronians built. We heard about it. Mariah's expression grew solemn. It seemed appropriate. A reminder of what we lost. It's beautiful, Vashon said. But it's also sad. Because humanity isn't dead. We're thriving. We're happy. We found what we were looking for. She paused. Maybe someday, if both our civilizations continue growing, we'll be able to build a different kind of memorial. Not one mourning a lost relationship, but one celebrating a new one, built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. I'd like that, Mariah said softly. So would I, Vashon agreed. But it won't be in my lifetime or yours. It'll take generations for both our civilizations to fully heal and rebuild trust. That's okay. Good things are worth waiting for. They shook hands one final time. Then the ships departed, council representatives heading back to their space, Terran envoys returning to Terra Nova. As Vashon's ship entered faster than light travel, Director Chorus asked, "Do you think they'll make it?" "I think they'll try," Vashon replied. "And that's more than we could say 20 years ago. The rest is up to them." "And us? What's next for humanity?" Vashon pulled up the star charts showing unexplored regions beyond Terra Nova. The galaxy is vast. We've barely scratched the surface of what's out there. More species to meet. More wonders to discover. More alliances to build. No regrets about leaving the council? Torvin asked. None, Vashon said firmly. Leaving was the best decision we ever made. It hurt at the time, but it gave us the freedom to become what we were meant to be. Not a species serving an ungrateful alliance, but explorers, teachers, and partners in a much grander endeavor. She looked at the stars rushing past. The council was too small for us. Not because they were inferior, but because they were limited by their own bureaucracy and politics. We needed room to grow. We found it. And now we're building something the galaxy has never seen. A true federation of equals spanning thousands of light years, united by shared values instead of shared territory. Do you think humanity will ever return to council space? Chorus wondered. Our descendants might, Vashon allowed. Generations from now, when both civilizations have matured. When the wounds have healed and the lessons have been learned. When meeting as equals isn't aspirational but natural. She smiled. But that's for them to decide. We've done our part. We left without farewell and the galaxy learned from our absence. Now we're teaching from a distance. That's enough. In the command center of Terra Nova, Planetary Governor Marcus Kane, son of Admiral Jasper Kane, born during the Exodus, watched the Terran ship return. His generation had grown up hearing stories of the Galactic Council, but they'd never known it themselves. To them, Terra Nova was home. The Concordant network was normal. Alliance with the Varan and 22 other species was how civilization worked. They were building something new. Something better. And they carried no bitterness toward the Council because they'd never been hurt by it. They could look at the past without pain and build the future without fear. That was humanity's ultimate gift to itself. Freedom from disappointment, space to grow, and the chance to start fresh. The Galactic Council got their second chance. Humanity got their clean slate. And somewhere in the infinite expanse of space, the ancient concordant structures hummed with satisfaction, having fulfilled their purpose, guiding worthy civilizations toward their fullest potential, one painful lesson at a time. Humanity had left without farewell. The Council had faced the consequences. But in the end, both emerged stronger, not together but better. And that, perhaps, was the most human outcome of all. Turning failure into growth, loss into opportunity, and goodbye into the foundation for something entirely new. The story of humanity and the Galactic Council ended not with reunion, but with mutual evolution. And that was exactly how it should be.